good guess. First Amendment has more to do with your speech. Yes, sir. Close, but no. It's the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. And when we talk about a pullover, that is in fact what we call a seizure. So you think back to 1791, and one of the many reasons that a bunch of people started this country, and yes, they weren't necessarily playing by all the rules. It was a bunch of 25-year-old white guys, but they didn't like British cops coming up to them in the street and saying, hey, you up to no good? What are you doing right now? Instead, they said, without probable cause, we can't subject people to search and seizure, and stopping you is seizing you. Now, there is a bit of a distinction here between probable cause, as was said then, and reasonable suspicion, which is actually what it takes to effectuate a stop or a pullover. So you talk about probable cause, and you've heard people talk about what that means. Well, generally what that means is when we talk about probable cause, that there was a crime committed, is it probable that a crime was committed, and is it probable that this guy or girl did it? If the answer is yes to both of those things, an officer is typically constitutional in his right to stop that person and possibly arrest them. When we get into motor vehicle law, that threshold actually drops a little bit. So we're not talking about probable cause in terms of the elements of an offense. We are now talking about reasonable suspicion, and that is a lower standard, and I'm going to give you an example. Speed limit's 55 miles an hour. You're driving 35 miles an hour. It's late at night. You're near some alcohol-serving establishments, and you're weaving within the lane. Have you broken a law? Absolutely not. However, do we all agree that the officer probably has a duty to investigate that and say, hey, what's my man doing here? Absolutely. It's reasonable suspicion, and that is the lower threshold. And I think it's very important that everybody here understands that when you come into contact with law enforcement, that just because you haven't broken a law, it is possible that that stop could be constitutional, and that is why it's so important that we play by the rules, we are respectful, and we understand that no matter what, we are going to be able to be heard at some point. Well, I want to talk about some reasons for pullovers because I was sitting in the front row, so I didn't see the hands go up. Humor me. How many people here have been pulled over? Okay, so the majority of the room. We're going to talk about a few things, and we're going to talk about how an officer can do his job and how an officer may not be doing his job with respect to certain fact patterns. First of all, speeding. Speeding, an officer can testify as a layperson. They don't need a radar gun. They don't need to follow somebody. And in fact, they can estimate speed just with the same level of expertise that you and I have. It's not much. And that is enough that they can pull you over. Pulling somebody over for their registration. Something's very important with respect to this. And I'm giving you all these fact patterns so you know that if it is one of those days where you're not having a great one, or the officer's not having a great one, or a little bit of a combination of both, before we do something reactionary and before we do something that's going to escalate the situation, understand what they are allowed to do. Officers are allowed to pull you over based on the ownership of a vehicle if he runs that tag, which you have no expectation of privacy, it's right out there, and makes a determination as to that driver, the owner of the vehicle, being suspended. And he can pull you over even if you've done nothing wrong. Now that's changed, and that's changed against defendants. And I'm a defense attorney. It's all I do. Yes, I do some FOP work, which means that when cops get in trouble, I'll sometimes represent them. But at the end of the day, I have always been on the defense side. One of the things that I've really been disheartened about is the fact that officers can pull somebody over by running the tag and just going off of the ownership. About 10 to 15 years ago, they also had to correlate what was roughly the identity of that person. So say, for example, somebody, they run my wife's tag, and turns out that she's suspended. They blue lighted her 10 to 15 years ago, and it was actually me driving. It's a bad pull, because they should have made sure that, no, you know what, it's a white male, it's not a white female, obviously it's somebody else driving the vehicle. No longer the case. Weaving, we already talked about that. Within reason, you're allowed to be within the lane. At the same time, take into consideration the time of day or night, take into consideration where you are, take into consideration some other factors. Next, and this one has always bothered me. Luckily, the case law helps us, but not as much as we should. Can you be pulled over or driving in what is deemed a high crime area? Okay, so I love it. I hear people say yes. I also hear people say it happens all the time. The quick answer is, if that's the only thing, no. I mean, that's somebody's neighborhood. What, are you kidding me? Anybody that doesn't live in Carriage Downs gets pulled over because they don't live in the Ritz? That's ridiculous. At the same time, this is where I'm going to be a little cynical with respect to law enforcement. It is amazing how oftentimes an officer, if he really wants to pull you, is going to find those 2 or 3 extra facts, find those 3 or 4 extra nuances that be like, well, it's not just because it's a high crime area. He stopped at that stop sign for about 6-7 seconds, looked like he was looking around, and the guy on the other corner kind of gave him the chin and nodded at him. Next thing you know, reasonable suspicion. Drives me crazy, but that is in fact the situation. Another thing that law enforcement officers will routinely rely on, and this is another one, I'm a defense attorney, I'm supposed to be adversarial, I'm supposed to be on the other side of this. Sometimes they effectuate a stop, but they say, it's simply because I'm the community caretaker. It's my other responsibility, not just fighting crime, not just being a law enforcement officer, but just making sure everything's okay. I thought it was odd, sir, that you were going 50 and a 55. I just wanted to make sure you weren't sick. Really? Really? Because you're a community caretaker? This is where eyebrows are raised. This is where distrust comes with respect to law enforcement. A couple more here. Tips. If I said right now, anybody here, and I knew that person, I called law enforcement from a burner phone, didn't give my name, and said, so-and-so's leaving here with a trunk of cocaine. Can an officer pull that person over? Just on those facts, fortunately, no. There has to be one of 2 things. Either A level of corroboration, meaning that, hey, I also saw there was like a plastic bag hanging out of the trunk, or I just saw a known drug dealer walking away from it, or that the tipster, the person that gave the tip, forfeited their anonymity, meaning they said, hey, not only is this guy leaving with a trunk, my name's Chris McCartan, no, this is my soch, because then I know I'm on the hook for fictitious influence to an officer or something like that if it turns out that I'm lying. Now, here is one thing that should make us all very concerned. Not to the point where we act out, but just so you know you're not crazy when things go south and you know you're getting pulled over for a ridiculous reason. Pretextual stops are considered constitutional. What do I mean by pretextual? I wouldn't have known that word either if I didn't learn it in law school. Pretextual stops are ones that are truly not based on what the officer is feeling. So, as long as there is a different reason that he or she could. So, has any officer truly ever pulled somebody over for going like 37 and a 35? No. But prior to clocking that person at 37 and a 35, said officer says to himself, or maybe even says out loud, why is that black guy in this white neighborhood? And that's the real reason he's pulled over. Well, because he's got the 37 and a 35, ball game. That allows officers to pull it over. So, no matter what, I look at the faces around this room. I know what you deal with. I never get pulled over. Everybody here is going to be subject to about 10 pullovers more than I ever will be. Understand, you got to keep it in the road, literally and figuratively, because if you're in a place where they feel as though you're causing some trouble, they're going to find a reason to pull you. All right. So let's talk a little bit about once you are pulled over during the investigation. And some of these things are things that the officer did a really good job of addressing. First, getting in or getting out of the vehicle, you do have to comply with what the officer has to say. So there are some times, and everybody's seen on YouTube, step out of the vehicle, ma'am. No, I don't want, why do I have to do that? Quick answer is because there are many legitimate reasons that law enforcement officers may want to get you out of the vehicle. There's other passengers in there. They want to separate you from them. They smell marijuana, but they want to see if it's from you or from the vehicle itself. Different reasons, oftentimes safety, but you do have to comply. I like what the officer said about when you're pulling over. It's got to be in a safe place. I want my wife, I want my daughter to pull over in a well-lit area. Throw those hazards on, throw the directional on, let them know, I'm doing this, officer. Yeah. It might just not be in the next 10 seconds. Don't reach around the vehicle. We talked about that. Hands on the wheel. We talked about that. And turning on the interior light. The CCW portion of this, we kind of addressed this. If you have your concealed, literally has to be the first thing out of your mouth. First thing out of your mouth, if you have your concealed, officer, I have a gun in the car. If that doesn't happen, number one, you can be charged with CCW, even though you've got your concealed. Number two, you are going to get a nasty gram in about a month, pre-conviction, just post-charge, from the sheriff of your jurisdiction saying, CCW is gone, brother. You're done. Very, very important. Windows all the way down. I know people like to get cute and say, well, why do you can get my license, you can get my registration through this little slit. Two things. Number one, you just come off as a jerk. You just come off as somebody being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. Number two, what did I say the threshold was with respect to pullovers? Reasonable suspicion or probable cause? Thank you. If I'm a cop, if I'm a seasoned cop, and somebody's playing this game of grab ass where they're only doing it down that low, that's suspicious in and of itself. I am assuming that the Cheech and Chong bellows of weed are about to spill out of it. And yes, you do have a duty to identify yourself. You don't have to answer questions about everything you've ever done wrong in your life, but a lot of people will say, I don't have to say anything to you. No, if it's a lawful pullover, you do have a duty to identify yourself. So a couple more things, and then I'll take some questions. What do you do in post-investigation, seizure, charge, whatever you want to call it? This is where I don't think we differ, but I will tell you that my tact is a little different than what Detective Wen would say. If you're being treated improperly, absolutely document it. Document it to a friend. Document it in a time-stamped medium. So send an email to a friend saying this is what happened that night. But pump the brakes on filing a report. 2 reasons. 3 reasons. Number one, maybe he didn't act out. Maybe you were having a bad day. Happens to all of us. And maybe he or she was not improper. Number 2, if they are improper, why are we letting them play defense? Why would we let them get their game face on? Hey, this officer did X, Y, and Z to me. 3 months later when court rolls around, or when he deals with IA, and he's already been able to see exactly what you plan on saying, he's going to have plenty of excuses. This is you can say it's a little bit more of a gamesmanship thing, but why would I give the officer warning as to what I was about to say? I'm going to file at some point, but maybe not right away. And number 3, it leads to the disposition of my case. If I have a case where the officer maybe treated me improperly, but you know what, at the end of the day, I'm probably guilty of something here, and I really need a quality negotiation. I really need something to happen here, above and beyond the officer having bad manners. Nothing turns that to garbage quicker than an officer finding out that you chirped about him. It can always happen after the fact, especially when that night you have an email saying, hey, I'm not making this up 6 months later. I told my buddy that night, I just didn't want to inflame the situation immediately. All right, last thing. 5 things, and I will tell you this. Generally, these are things that people would attribute to sovereign citizenship. Now, sovereign citizenship and the invocations thereof, if you don't know what it is, I'm going to give you the Twitter version of what it is. There are many people in society that don't believe that certain laws should apply to them. I got to tell you, I don't necessarily disagree with all of their invocations, but by and large, we do, and by and large, they never work. So a few things. Number one, there are many people that just can't help themselves, and they want to talk to officers about, you can't stop me, you don't need my license, I have the right to travel. How many people have heard that on the internet where people talk about I have a right to travel? Raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, you do have a right to travel. You don't have a right to do it in a car. That is a privilege. Cars are complex. They can hurt people. There's laws with respect to it. Yes, you have the right to travel, not necessarily in a vehicle. Number 2, you'll have some people talking about the jurisdiction of the officer. That, hey, I never entered into a contract. Again, this is a very sovereign citizenship argument. Well, the fact that you're on roads paved by Big Brother, by the government, lets you know that you did enter into a contract. That's why you're out there. And these officers do have jurisdiction over that. That's why you do need to be polite and cooperative. Sometimes people say speeding. Can't do that to me. It's not a crime because there's no victim. It's kind of a ridiculous argument. That's like me taking a shot at somebody with a gun, and if I miss them, there's no victim. Can't charge me with attempted murder. Not the case. Number 4, oftentimes we talk about the distinction between voluntary contact, detention, arrest. And sometimes the waters are a little muddy with respect to the area between detention and arrest. Officers are allowed to partake in a brief investigatory detention of people when they believe there's reasonable suspicion or probable cause that a crime was committed. That's the way the world works. That's why these guys and girls in blue work so hard for us. And are there some dirty ones? Absolutely. But by and large, they're pretty good people, and they do a very important job. Understand that we talk about, if I'm not detained, I should be free to leave. Not necessarily. Let me work this up a little bit. Let me run your registration. Let me run your license, ma'am. I'm going to get you out of here in the next few minutes. And then lastly, it always makes me smile a little bit. And again, I am on the citizen side with respect to my 9 to 5. I go against law enforcement in a cooperative way, in a collegial way, but nevertheless, it's an adversarial profession, and I go to trial 3 times a week. Anytime somebody asks for your name and badge number or to bring a supervisor, the arrogance alone is going to escalate the situation. There has never been a speeding ticket. There has never been a marijuana charge. There has never been a charge that was the product of a pullover that was litigated and tried on the side of the road. You will have your proverbial day in court, but A, we got to get you home that night, and B, we have to do it in an actual forum where the actions of the officer can be deemed either constitutional or unconstitutional. All right, go. Anybody? Question? Yes, sir. Okay, so it's going to depend on what you are charged with, and lawyers differ from one to the next. I'm not going to throw my pricing out there right now because I don't want to lowball myself or come off as the scumbag in the room. But I will tell you that it's all going to be predicated on A, what the charge is, and B, what the attorney's fee structure is. Some attorneys go completely on an hourly basis. This is the hours that I'm putting in. This is what I'm going to pop you for per hour. A guy like me, I typically charge a flat rate based on the type of crime, other than first-degree murder, which you always have to do hourly because you never know how long you're going to put into it. Who else?
What happens when a young man or a young woman is pulled over and they realize that they may need an attorney and they're quiet and they are going to wait for an attorney? Depending on the time of day or night, how would they go about getting an attorney? Because sometimes what happens, you know what happens when you get arrested on Friday, right?
Yes.
It's the worst time to get arrested.
5:05 on Friday?
There you go.
I'll see you Monday morning at best, yeah.
Exactly. So how do the young men, because they need to know that, God forbid something happens and they need an attorney, how do they move about that? Especially if they're young. Sometimes mom or dad may not know, but how will they get an attorney based upon the time? And, you know, sometimes people say pro bono. These are languages that are used. So speak to them about that, and what do they do if they need an attorney, whether it be something where a traffic ticket or, marijuana charge or whatever the case may be. Talk to them about that, please.
Okay, love it. So first let's talk about things that you're not getting arrested for. Traffic ticket, maybe a low-end weed charge, and don't take too much, I'm taking a little creative license there. You can get arrested, and people do routinely get arrested for having weed on them. It is the current tenor of most jurisdictions of North Carolina, though, that if you keep your behavior in the road, you're not a frequent flyer with respect to the criminal justice system, you're probably getting a citation and going home that day. In those situations, deep breath, take the weekend, talk to some friends about a referral, and maybe schedule some consults for Monday or Tuesday because your court date's going to be pushed out. If you go to the clink that night, A, answer absolutely 0 questions, and B, have a phone number handy of somebody that you can trust. Do not say anything of substance on the telephone. There are 4 people that you can contact that they have a duty to not record. Who can tell me what they are? Lawyer, number one. Parent? No, they will record the hell out of you. Pastor, number two. You got two in the room. Number three, this one's a little bit weird. Think about HIPAA. Doctor. And number four, think about North Carolina and the fact that they don't let people get divorced for a year after separation. We place a great stock in marriage. Your spouse, yes. Spousal privilege is still, because it basically has to do with encouraging confidential communications between husband and wife. So, all that said, you are always recorded. You are always recorded on jail calls. Doesn't matter what you say, or doesn't matter what you say. They don't have to turn it off. If you're talking to somebody that's not one of those four, you're getting recorded, and they're going to use it against you. Anybody? Yes, ma'am. I love that you say that, because I make a point of, anytime I take a jail call, I chirp it for 10 seconds before. I'm Chris McCartan. I'm your attorney. This is a legal conversation, and make sure that if they're getting cute and saying, oh, well, we didn't know right away. Well, no, you did. So, great question. Give me one more. Somebody think of something good. Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, because now the phones are a thing. Like, so with these young people, like, they got their phones in their hand now. If they're driving, can that officer just see, because a lot of times now, they don't have the head or nothing. They just like, is that reasonable suspicion, and can they be pulled over for that?
So, North Carolina, we still do not have a preclusion to talking on your cell phone. You're still allowed to. Most states have actually transitioned to a hands-free mandate. And as parents, we'd like to think that our kids are transitioning to that just based on safety alone. But no, that would not be reasonable suspicion, because you're allowed to talk on your phone in North Carolina. Yeah. Now, what you are not allowed to do is what? Text while driving. And that's gotten pretty broad with respect to, originally it was just text communication. Now, if they look at your search history and they know, the officer seizes your phone and, after an accident and sees that you were Googling something, that would fall under that also. Yes, sir. Yes. So these are the thresholds. These are the thresholds. Up to a half ounce. And listen, don't take this as a license here. All right? Yeah. We got a bunch of people that are going to come up just short of the amounts that I'm saying. So up to a half ounce of marijuana is a class 3 misdemeanor, which is the lowest end misdemeanor. From a half an ounce to an ounce and a half, that is a class 1 misdemeanor, and anything over an ounce and a half is felonious possession. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Say, for instance, if you do get pulled over by the cops and you end up getting arrested and they confiscate your phone, can you talk about what they can download, how long they can keep it, do they give it back to you, and all your contacts are erased? What legally can they do or can they not do if they take your phone?
That is a great question. I actually made a note of that, and it just wasn't organic for me to speak about it at the time, so I love that you're bringing this up. Even when somebody is arrested, officers are generally bound by the scope of the investigation and what they have before. So I'm going to give you a different kind of example, but I think it'll illustrate what you're talking about. If I pull somebody over, if an officer pulls somebody over for 14 over, just a very pedestrian 49 to 35 speed. Person pulls over in an appropriate location, appropriate amount of time, they're polite and cooperative, they roll down the window, everything's good to go, and the officer says, well, can I check the trunk? Now, this is actually pretty friendly to defendants. Consent used to be everything, and there'd be a lot of people that just were insecure, like, yeah, fine, officer, do whatever you say because I don't want to get shot or whatever. Now, officers are actually precluded from looking into things that there is not suspicion or PC for then. However, let's say that the officer pulls you over for speeding, but when you roll down the window, he smells marijuana. Now he's got PC to search the vehicle. And then when he searches the vehicle, he's got 2 ounces of weed, all broken up into eighths, and scales, and $2,700 in cash. Tell me why he can then look at the phone. Who can tell me? Thank you. They're gonna look and see who he got it from or who he's moving it to. And if he's gonna be able to get in that phone, and he's gonna take it some geek down at the crime lab, and they're gonna open it up, even if you think your password's golden, and they're gonna see that 15 minutes before he pulled you over, you and JJ were talking about, hey, I got the stuff. All right, come get it. We're good to go. Yeah. So that's where they would be able. But there's got to be that nexus. And even in terms of something like carrying concealed weapons. So let's say he takes somebody in, and then when they're processing you, they take your phone. I think that'd be a stretch. I don't think they can get in your phone if you're arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. I mean, what would be the nexus? There would be nothing logical there. But I think the possession with intent example is probably more on point. Great question. Anybody else? Actually, give me one more. I'm enjoying myself. Somebody come up with something. Okay. Just in general? All right. So we're talking about bonds. Varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Industry standard is 10%, but if it's a relatively low bond, you're going to be into somebody for 15%. What does that mean? It means that you are, so if your bond is $10,000 on a charge after being arrested, you can either A, find a way to put it all up yourself. If that's the case, you get it all back when the case is disposed of. If you don't have 10K, you're probably going to be into a bondsman for $1,000 that you never see again. And that's what he or she coordinates for you. You see the neon lights all around the jail. They hang out where they are needed. And the nice thing is, though, again, industry standard is generally about that. The only time it's 15 is if the bond's lower. If somebody's being held on a $300 bond, it's kind of tough to say, hey, can you come get me for $30? Now they're going to want a little bit more. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so yeah, great. So there's multiple kinds of expunctions. We're going to start with the easiest one, and that is a not guilty or a dismissal. You are automatically afforded an expunction. You've still got to file the paperwork. However, you don't have to pay a fee. If you file the paperwork, you can remove that. And by the way, for people that don't know what an expunction is removing any vestige that day of your life ever occurred if you were charged. Oftentimes on like domestics, on sex-related cases, even if somebody is objectively not guilty and the charge went away long ago, it's still a really weird thing to say that you were accused of at one point. You want to get that thing removed, those automatically, and it typically takes about 6 months. The second are non-violent felonies. Currently, it's 10 years, and those are convictions. 10 years. Legislature's trying to move that thing down to 5. Next, misdemeanors for people under the age of 18. Now that's become a little different as of late, because about 2.5 years ago, North Carolina did the right thing and changed the age of majority. Took it from 16 to 17. I think they should have taken 18, but listen, I'll choose my battles here. But misdemeanors under the age of 18 are, even if you're convicted, you got to get some letters of character and things like that, but you're eligible to get those charges. A lot of times those would be like your shoplifters, things that people, it doesn't make it right, but they screw up in their mid-teens. And then lastly, alcohol and weed charges prior to your 21st birthday, even if convicted, you're eligible for expunction. Yes? Okay. Dishonorable discharge. So there's a few different crimes that I think you could be talking about. Now first, our felonies go from A only to I. So those are all the letters with respect to felony. Tell me a little bit, give me an example. No, not in state law. And I don't practice Fed, I practice state. Okay. Yeah, so that would be a C. By the way, the earlier in the alphabet it goes, the more severe, like first degree murder is a Class A felony. Shooting somebody, if they were injured substantially, that would be a C felony. If nobody was convicted, yes. But if somebody was convicted, no, because it's considered a violent felony. No problem. Yes, sir.
How does self-defense work?
Okay. So everything is very, very situational. And this is going to sound a little smarmy, but it is what that situation dictates. People defend themselves every day appropriately. There are some other times where people say, I was defending myself. It's like, really? Really? You're 6'5". She's 105 pounds soaking wet. You weren't defending yourself. No way. So everything's situational, but I will tell you this. That is not a procedural thing that I can address. That is a factual issue in that I can't tell you what the law is. The law is whatever the jury says happened that day. Well, it depends. When you say back away, are we backing away just long enough that they can't? I mean, that's your classic one that's situational. I mean, we have the right to carry a firearm. And that's the exact situation that you would use it. At the same time, if we're talking about 4 guys, each got a shot on you, maybe you caught one to the rib, but otherwise you're able to get away and extract yourself from the situation, and they're over there, you're like, no, you're not gonna get over on me like that, and go back. No, that's no longer self-defense because the threat is no longer there. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Well, everything there is going to be very nuanced with respect to what happened on that day. And it's funny you bring that up because as much as I try to give this hyperbolic example of my man right here going toe-to-toe with a 105-pound girl, I will tell you this. I've been doing this for 22 years. I've represented some very little women that can bring it, man. And it's, they don't mess around. And even if it's not toe-to-toe, I've had guys wake up with, getting smacked in the face. I was like, dang, I didn't sign up for this. So, yeah, it actually does happen a lot. With respect to the background check, it's always going to depend. This is all I can tell people. It's going to depend on who is running the background check. For example, there are some companies that want everything you've ever done. And the funny thing is, there are some of them that if you leave off something on your application and then they get it, they're going to say, we really didn't care about the crime itself. We do care that you lied to us, though, and didn't put it down. There are other companies that only look for felonies. There are other companies that only look for in-state charges. So, but it's kind of difficult because what do? Apply for a job and call HR and say, how far are you going to dig into my past? I mean, at that point, they're going to say very, very far. Oh, girl. Well, yeah, so it would depend. I mean, like, for example, my office, I can run a state background check. I can't get anything from out of state, though, unless it showed up in North Carolina. But a lot of times that would be like, I'll represent somebody who lives here now, but got put on the sex offender registry in Michigan. So I'll see the Michigan charge, but it's only because I knew they were on the registry here. Yes, sir. Yes. No. Great question. Yes. It is. No. Yes. It's sealed. And listen, there's nothing to be embarrassed about that. There's a reason that juvie law happens, and it gives us that break because we were all idiots when we were young. We all screwed up. And even the ones that didn't get caught did some really stupid shit. I get it. Now, the one thing, though, the one thing that everybody does have to be aware of is this is one oddity with respect to North Carolina law. You know how I said that they changed the age of majority from 16 to 17? The rule is, though, that if you've ever been an adult, you are always an adult. Now, that really only took about 1 year. But, for example, I had some clients who were convicted of crimes as adults at 16, right before the law changed. Then the law changed to make the age of majority 17. They're still 16, and they go do something else stupid. That person would not get the grace of the new birthday. Why? Because they were already an adult per the criminal justice system. Yeah, go. Okay. So you're asking about somebody right. Okay, no, it's a great question. So I'm going to make it a little more factually appropriate. They're probably not going to pull you over for you having a permit, not a license, and then looking in and seeing, why don't I see an adult in there? You know, they're pulling you over for something else. So generally what would happen in a situation like that is they pulled you over for going 50 and a 35, and then once they run you, you're like, you're not supposed to be driving without a supervisor. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to drop off my little brother, and my mom's not feeling well today. They're going to write you a citation. They're going to say, go straight home. They're probably not going to make mom and dad pick you up. In court, I'm going to get the speed modified to a non-moving violation, but I'm probably going to push it out, continue the case, past the point that you can get licensed so I can get the permit violation dismissed. Okay, yeah, we'll go one more. Then I know there's other people here too.
Okay, so my question is, I used to teach, and one of my students couldn't get a job because of his record. Have you heard that will change now, since obviously there's a higher office that has a lot of records? So is there a change? I mean, because I don't think our kids should be punished for their mistakes. Have you heard anything? Because you're an attorney.
Right. So, I mean, when we go back to, the situation with expunctions and getting things like that removed, I am hoping that they are going to whittle it down a lot more to a more, because 10 years is a ton of time to wait, and especially for a non-violent offense. So the quick answer is, you probably got to go through an expunction process. I am just hoping that more and more each legislature takes a look at it. Because here's what happens. We've got this legislature that some of them just campaign on this very, hey, if you've ever broken the law, we're going to break it off in you, and we're never going to let you fix it. Is that really what we want as North Carolinians? Is that really do we want all of our people to get turned down for jobs because in South Carolina they're getting things removed that we can't? I would like to think that even our most draconian, even our most anti-crime legislators understand that if we give nobody a path to correct their past, we're hurting the state. Our students are suffering. Our employees are suffering. It's just it's a bad look. So all I can tell you is whittle it down. Hopefully they get to that 5-year expunction mark.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Listen, we're going to hurry up and wrap it up. We're going to give the white boy a pass because of just for a day. Listen, so he's going to give a card for those of you who need an attorney. This is what he is here for. We got to get ready to go because this is going. I mean, y'all can. It's incredible. So thank you, beautiful. He's going to give your information. Anyone that is going to court or has anything concerning law, he is your guide. We're going to have Jeremy come up really quick. He's going to talk to you guys about concealed carry. A lot of young men and young women are here, and we want you to understand the correct way. After he speaks, we're going to have a mother come to talk about trauma, and then we're going to have the drug counselor end it, and we're going to feed you. We need you to open up your phones and make sure you register so we can just send you information about when we're going to do this again. So the next voice you'll hear is Jeremy Minor. You guys, if you get hungry, there are food in the back for you. We thank God for everyone, but let Jeremy tell you about concealed carry. After that, you're going to hear a mother's trauma, and then you're going to go inside of your packages, and we want to show you something. What costs $44? $44. If Walmart, Target, we're giving you free today. But it is a lifesaver. It's like having a defibrillator in your house. So Jeremy's going to come up after Jeremy, a mother's trauma, and then we're going to end with the drug counselor, Bettina, and she's going to show you something, how to work something that is in your bag. Let's give him a round of applause, and we'll go in that order, okay?
All right, what's going on, y'all? Again, my name is Jeremy Minor. I'm 35, but y'all can call me Big Unc, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's like, I'm going to just try to be myself with this, y'all, and just roll through it. So, as far as, like, with the younger crowd, like, everybody kind of into guns now, like, you know what I'm saying? One day want to, so it's very important to me. I started getting into firearms probably about 5-6 years ago, and start understanding the importance of it for self-defense, but not only just that, but the laws around it, and knowing, like, when you getting pulled over and you carrying, what should you do, right? You know what I'm saying? So I know we got the packet in your thing. I would definitely encourage you to look over that. But I'll just start with, like, carrying when you get pulled over. Concealed. Carrying concealed. Because in North Carolina, we do have 2 ways to carry a gun. If y'all didn't know that. It's open carry and it's concealed carry. For concealed carry, you have to be at least 21 years or older to get a concealed carry permit. And that allows you to carry a pistol concealed, not visible. That's what that means. Open carry, which is a right in North Carolina, you can open carry a gun on your side or visible, but it has to be visible. So I'll start with this as far as, like, when I started open carrying, I think I was like 22, 23. I had my 40 on my side, you know what I'm saying? I'm walking through, you know what I'm saying, whatever, getting pulled over, right? One thing that I would do immediately when getting pulled over, take my gun out. Before the officer even get out of his car, I take my gun out, drop my magazine, I clear the chamber, make sure it's clear, lock it back, put it on the dashboard, and put my hands on the steering wheel. The officer comes up. Even though he may already see, I'll get to your question in 1 second, Don. Even though he may already see the gun, I'm going to still tell him, officer, I have a registered firearm in the vehicle. Here's my license. We can go from there. Now, this is with open carry without having a concealed carry permit. The firearm has to be visible, and it will be in your best interest to have it visible and letting the officer know I have a registered firearm in the vehicle. That's one way. Concealed carry, you can have the firearm concealed on your person, meaning, front, side, or whatever the case is. But like the officer stated before, it is still a duty to inform the officer. First thing you should do. Even if you have your license and your concealed carry out, when the officer walks up, hey, how's your day going, whatever. Officer, before we go any further, I have a registered firearm on my person. My hands are at 10 and 2. I have a registered firearm on my person. I have it on my waistband on the side, or I have it under my seat. Here's my license and my permit. What would you like for me to do further? That is very important to do that and keep your hands on the steering wheel. That way they're visible at all times. That's 9 times out of 10 going to alleviate a lot of mess that shouldn't even happen in the first place, which we all know. You know what I'm saying? But for real, my experiences of going through that, I feel like that's helped me out majority of the time, even when I've dealt with a butthole, that may have had a bad day or whatever. I've always looked at, okay, the officer has their accountability, but I have mine too, and I want to go home to my wife and kids as well too. You know what I'm saying? So, however we can make this process easier, give me my ticket or whatever the case is, you know, I ain't gonna have that argument or that fight with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't worth it to me. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's that. You said you had a question? Oh, okay. Along with that, talk about gun safety. In today's world, there's a lot of us that are carrying more now, which is a great thing to protect our lives. Okay, go ahead. Machine guns. You got to have a special license to own a machine gun, and even then, you can't just willy-nilly just walk around with it. Even with rifles, you know, everybody get the ARPs now, the Dracos, right? You know what I'm saying? Those are pistols, right? But do you really want to be in public as a young black man with the ARP hanging out your side? And you might have an encounter with, you know what I'm saying? Even though you might not be doing nothing wrong, and yeah, it is the law, but you don't want to bring that attention to you when it's not necessary. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Yeah, with gun safety, man, I am a prominent gun enthusiast. You know, I love to go shoot. I try to go as often as I can. But I take safety very seriously, as I think we all should. You know what I'm saying? I've been in environments where, you know, I've been in the hood where, yeah, they pulling them out. You know what I'm saying? Oh, look what I got. Woo, woo, woo. And I think for me, like, the more I got into it, the more I understood, like, in certain situations. Like, I literally had to stop a guy who had the ARP. He had a full magazine loaded, had the chamber back, had an off safety. Only thing he had to do was chamber around and pull that trigger, and somebody would have been gone. You know what I'm saying? And he was pulling it out, showing it to everybody, yeah. And I'm looking, and I'm like, yeah, bro, let me see that real quick. Let me go ahead and make that safe before we have an accident that we don't need to have. You know what I'm saying? So it's cool to have, you know what I'm saying? They're fun to shoot, but gun safety is that's very important, man. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Don't point it at anything you're not willing to destroy. You know what I'm saying? Know your target and what's beyond it. You know what I'm saying? You follow those rules, man. You cool. You got a question? So I'm no lawyer. You know, we had the lawyer earlier, you know what I'm saying, who can elaborate more on the semantics of, self-defense. But what I will say is, by law, it says you have the right to protect yourself and others from great bodily harm or imminent death. So that, again, is a broad statement. It could be anything, right? But let's say you carrying, right? You know what I'm saying? And somebody come up to you with a pole and start swinging at you. You have the right to shoot them? Yes, you do. That pole can cause great bodily harm or even death. You know what I'm saying? So it's just different circumstances. Like, you have to, because when it comes down to it, when you go to jail and then you go to court, you and your attorney have to convince the jury that a reasonable person would have done the same thing that you did in that situation. So, you know, even though we may have beef, I'm like, I'm gonna go pop the trunk. What's up? What's happening? You know, you initiated that, right? So that won't be considered self-defense.
That's attempted murder. Right?
That's attempted murder. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question before you get too far. You said that when you get pulled over, you yourself said that you unchambered it, you dropped the clip, you unchambered the bullet, you put it on the dash. Now you are an instructor. most part, I guess the reason why it'll make me nervous if I'm on the phone, my wife saying, Fred, I'm being pulled over. I don't know if I want her to try to do that. Like, is that something you advise, or because if it's one in the chamber and you're nervous about a stop, so it's that kind of tell me
Okay, so the difference is when I was explaining that, that's with open carry.
Okay.
With open carry, I think it's a stupid law, but you have to have the firearm visible in the vehicle, even when you're driving, even when you're not being pulled over. It has to be visible at all times, which is why I say, go ahead and unload it, rack the slide back, put it on the dashboard 10 and 2. That's for open carry. Now, once you get your concealed, you don't have to do that.
Okay.
Because not everybody's, you already know what it's slide, trying to lock a slide back. That's pretty tough to do.
Yeah.
You know, so, but I'm just saying, as far as open carry, whenever you're driving like that, because it has to be visible, you know, that's the best thing. Yes, ma'am. That's your best bet. So, right. So hear me out. So you don't have to, but again, the officer doesn't know you personally. You know, they're pulling you over, but if they see the gun on the passenger seat or on the dashboard with the magazine still in it, they don't know if it's loaded or not, right? So, but even though you may be cooperating or complying, or however you want to look at it, they still see a gun with a magazine in it. They don't know if it's around in the chamber. They don't know if you could hurry up and just reach, and then, because another thing with the law too is with open carry, the firearm cannot be loaded or easily accessible, which means within arm's reach, because that can also be used. I'm feared for my life. He had a loaded gun right next to him. What am I supposed to do? You see what I'm saying? So those type of scenarios kind of. And even with concealed carry, it's different, but I just look at it like, hey, make this interaction as smooth as possible. Don't make any sudden moves. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Officer, what would you like me to do? You know what I'm saying? And then kind of go from there. Better to go through that, go home safe, than loss of life.
In most of those cases, they're gonna take the firearm with them anyway, right?
Yeah, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
Now, I know what they said, but I've actually went through it when I've had my gun on me, and they would say, well, do you mind if we take your firearm while we have this interaction? Yes, sir, go ahead. And I keep my hands still with it, open the car door, take the gun. They'll clear it themselves, do their thing, put it in their car, and then we'll continue through the traffic violation. Yeah, so trying to go organic with it. Okay. With concealed carry, let's go to places where you can carry, where you can't. Appreciate you. Places where you can go, where you can't. Most public places, as long as the sign is not posted, you can carry. And it's North Carolina, you actually have to have a standard size sign that says no firearms prohibited.
What's the standard size?
I think it's like a 4x8 square, and it has to be like posted to be visible. So when you walk, that you can see it from your visible eye that, okay, they don't want any firearms in this building. I don't know if people noticed, but at one point Walmart, they didn't have any signs posted, so you can open carry in there. Well, now they have signs now that say we prefer you conceal carry. Just kind of the ways of the world. But anytime I carry everywhere I go, wherever I can. But every time I'm going somewhere in a building, I look to see if am I allowed to have my firearm in here or not. Different people have different views on that. I'll just say that, I think me protecting my life, my family's life is more important than any sign. Than want to follow the law, but at the same time, too, I'm protecting my life, my family. So if I'm at the mall, you know what I'm saying, and some knucklehead, crazy joker, trying to come in there and shoot up the place, I'd rather have something on me that way I could protect life than just being an easy target. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I look at that. I mean, if you get caught carrying while you on property like that, I did have that on my slide as well. I think the first offense is a misdemeanor, and the second offense is a Class H felony, which I think the lawyer said the higher letter of the person is. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes. So it is very different. State laws are very different, North and South Carolina. You know, we're kind of on the border. Excuse me. South Carolina does not have open carry. So although we can open carry here openly, South Carolina we cannot at all. My best advice dealing with traveling to a different state is to look up the laws for that state that you're traveling to, because the laws are different. Also, a state that you're traveling through, that counts as well too. Excuse me. So just say you're going to, let's say we're going to Georgia. So we got to look at North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to differ. It's going to differ. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't. You know what I'm saying? Because unfortunately, they're going to look at it like it's your responsibility. You should have known better. You know what I'm saying? Like me and my wife, we just came back from Chicago. You can't have no gun up there at all. You know, we flew there, and like I enjoyed myself. But I told my wife, I said, you know, it just I would rather have my gun. You know what I'm saying? Protect myself. Good. There was laws there, but I knew that. I knew that going into it, what the laws were going into this state. They are legal in Illinois. I just heard it's very, very hard to get a permit. Like, they don't have it as easy as we do here. Right. That's the crazy thing, right? You know. You got any other questions or anything?